夜にもかけなかったお前があいつらに匹敵するとでも言うのか。
Punch it's all in the mind. If you wanna test me, I'm sure you'll find the things I'll teach ya. Be sure to beat ya. Nevertheless, you'll get a lesson from teacher. Now kick,
Kick,
punch,
punch,
chop,
chop,
block.
block,
Once more now, kick,
kick.
punch.
I'm not here today to knock the live-action adaptation of One Piece, but it's bringing out a lot of weird takes that go to show how little people understand the East Blue Saga, and Baratie specifically, or Don Krieg even more specifically. It's a common thing, but it's still a shame people don't know how some earlier minor characters can do great things for a story. People don't talk about how Long Ring is important for Water 7, and not just because it introduced Aokiji. Foxy plays a part as well, darn it. I can understand from a screenwriter's perspective why you would axe Don Krieg in this way. When adapting dozens of chapters into 8 episodes, something has got to be cut. And doing it in this way at least builds up how powerful the warlords are in a cost and time effective way. It's a fun scene on its own as well. But some people are calling this an objective improvement over the original story. I can admit it's an effective change, but many fans are writing off Don Krieg's character as an interchangeable villain of the week, when that's not true in the slightest. If you're a fan of my channel, you might remember that I brought up Don Krieg on 2 separate occasions at least, when discussing some of the larger themes of the story. And that's because Krieg, like many other great elements in East Blue, is a springboard for the broader themes of the story, while also using those ideas to create a compelling narrative in its own right. If you don't have Don Krieg, Luffy, Sanji, Jean, and Zeph all suffer as characters, and you don't want that. This video is a lot more of a general Baratie analysis than just Krieg specifically, but no one on the planet seems to be willing to give this man credit for anything, so he's getting the title. One Piece is a story of a ragtag found family striking out on their own and living life the way they want to. And sometimes that means doing things the hard way. Even if you could escape danger and live comfortably by selling out or backing down, true freedom is found when you stick to your own wants and beliefs. And Sanji's easily the character who exemplifies this most besides Luffy. He imposes so many restrictions onto himself. No hitting women, no fighting with your hands, no wasting food, and no stomach left unfed. It might seem like a contradiction at a glance. Sanji even tells Gin that he'll kick Krieg's men to death if they try to take Baratie, right after he saved them all from starvation. It would be far more practical for Sanji if he refused to feed his enemies, or kicked a woman whenever it was convenient for him. But these rules are Sanji's freedom. He decided he wants to live this way, so if he compromised his beliefs out of practicality, he would be a slave to practicality, living life not in the way that would make him happiest, just the way that's least likely to get him killed. And Don Krieg is a great foil to Sanji. Krieg has no code of conduct. He's just desperate for victory at any cost. He's the foul play king. To him, a flag isn't a source of pride, it's camouflage that he'll change at convenience. He lies through his teeth several times in the arc. He uses cowardly tactics like poison gas and his spiked cape. There's no such thing as dirty in a fight between pirates, and Krieg is willing to get as dirty as possible. Don Krieg and his crew are introduced as broken husks, spirits and bodies broken from a trip into the Grand Line. Seeing the crew interact with people who survived the Grand Line and fled out of fear was a great decision, especially because on paper, Don Krieg has everything a pirate captain needs to make it on the Grand Line. Superhuman strength, powerful weapons and armor, strategic intelligence, a large crew, fit with powerful and extremely loyal men like Gin and Pearl. But he's missing something important, something that Baratie's chore boy has in spades. Luffy doesn't ignore the dangers that come with being a pirate. If anything, Luffy embraces the danger that comes with it, and acts with them in mind. He won't find a way around Krieg's spikes, he'll punch right through them. If Krieg's spear is a problem, he'll take a few hits in order to break it. If Luffy wasn't willing to take risks and get hurt, he wouldn't have the means to get past Krieg's tricks. And it's frankly inspiring. Krieg says all he was lacking in was knowledge, and this isn't untrue. But because he's unwilling to face the dangers head-on, he doesn't create opportunities to learn. Krieg mistakes Mihawk's swordsmanship for a delve through power. That's a detail I really like, because where Luffy learns through experience and sees how he measures up to the world, Don Krieg doesn't know how little he knows. Putting yourself out there is the best way to learn. Even if Krieg got his hands on Zeph's logbook, it can only help him so much. While it's true that very few, if any, pirates on the planet could defeat Mihawk, that doesn't mean running away was the right choice. Mihawk destroyed Krieg's fleet, but he was also willing to let Zoro, a single man not much stronger than Krieg himself, walk away with his life. If Krieg stood his ground and showed real grit and potential as a pirate, then Mihawk likely would have treated him the same way he did Luffy and Zoro. Mihawk picked this fight out of boredom after all. It's not like he was seriously intent on killing Krieg. It wasn't Zoro's weapons or his skills that made the difference. It was his willingness to not back down. Willingness that Krieg doesn't have. He can put on all the armor he wants, gather all the weapons he wants, gather all the men he wants. But until he puts himself out there on the front lines and faces the dangers head on like Luffy or Zoro would, he will always be a second-rate hack pirate. Krieg has the same problem Sanji has. He is unwilling to fully put himself on the line for the sake of his dream. Krieg does it out of rational cowardice, and Sanji does it both because he still believes valuing dreams over your life is foolish, and because he feels like his life doesn't belong to him. Sanji is only willing to risk his life in service to Zeph. Many of the chefs confuse this dynamic for ambition. Sanji must be refusing to leave so that he can take over when Zeph croaks, but it's the opposite. He's quick to sacrifice himself for the sake of the people who saved him, even when those same people want nothing more than for him to live. Zeph's tough love is an attempt to push Sanji away, to try and aggravate him enough so that he will finally leave the restaurant and pursue his dream. All Zeph wants is for Sanji to be free, for Sanji to realize that his life isn't tied to Zeph's, and that he's free to risk it out on the sea. It's very important that Sanji was there to witness Zoro fight Mihawk, to see him try and win a losing battle, and to even offer his opponent the final blow. Because Zoro would rather die than pass up an opportunity to achieve his dream. He would rather die than suffer a coward's wound, the same way Sanji would rather die than kick a woman or leave a man hungry. And Zoro's convictions alongside Luffy's against Krieg are what gave Sanji an example to live by. I want to emphasize that one more time. It's very important that Sanji watch Zoro and Luffy fight at Baratier in order to get inspired and have a character arc so that he's willing to go on his journey to fulfill his dream and risk his life out at sea. If you have to cut one of these things, that's perfectly fine, but if you, say, didn't have him watch either, then suddenly Sanji has no character arc, and that's not going to change no matter how good his actor is. Okay? He still has low self-worth and values his friend's dreams above his own, but he's taken his first steps, and has decided his life is worth risking for the All Blue. Before I close out, I'd be remiss not to mention Don Krieg's right-hand man, Gin. Gin's character mostly speaks for itself. It's a what goes around comes around payoff for Sanji's kindness. His beliefs and principles that saved Gin resulted in Gin saving him later. But there is a couple other angles to see this relationship from. Gin and Sanji and Baratie are both right-hand men, who are fiercely loyal to their bosses. The sad difference is Zeph's tough love was a front to push Sanji to becoming his own man, whereas Gin becoming his own man and finding wants outside of Krieg's orders only angers Krieg. Gin is still loyal to the fault, even to the end, but once he develops principles that inconvenience Krieg, he's cut loose. Sanji is lucky that both his father and his captain are willing to fight just as hard as he is to protect his bothersome principles. But it's also a sign of their caliber as pirates. The pirate life isn't for people who want to take things easy. It's not for the people who want to be practical and smart, because if you were, you wouldn't be a pirate. You'd probably join up with the Marines. That's an easy way to become powerful. It's for the people who are determined and ambitious, for those not content with the security of land. The sea is beautiful, but it's also dangerous. And that idea is what East Blue needs to impart to truly set up this epic odyssey. That's why a chef is so important in the first place. The sea is a cruel mistress, and she doesn't give food as easily as the land does. Chapter 1 is about Luffy as a child experiencing danger at sea and deciding that he's not ready to be a pirate yet. Romance Dawn is about 2, or I should say 3, free spirits meeting each other and developing camaraderie through their dreams. Orange Town is about the nature of those dreams, and distinguishing between material and sentimental treasure. And this sets up how Nami is caught between the two. Gaimon's chapter is about how, even if you're disappointed at the end of your dream, you can still find joy and things to care about in pursuit of it. How the treasure can be the friends you made along the way. Syrup Village is about an absolute failure of a pirate who wants to return to the safety of the land, and a coward who faced his fears to set out to the sea. Baratie is an evolution of that, with a pirate who refuses to give up on his ambitions, but who can't fully commit and wholeheartedly offer his life to the sea or to his own dream. And it's about a young chef who hasn't fully committed himself to his dream out of obligation, And this is all set up right before the Straw Hats band together and liberate an entire island whose freedom isn't being repressed by the citizens' fears or obligations or irrationality like in the case of the Straw Hats, but by a pirate lording over them with force, moving from internal conflicts to an external one in regards to freedom, as Arlong is the first villain who wants to control and enslave other people. The East Blue is when One Piece gets good. Many people might look back at it as small stakes setup and character introductions before the quote-unquote good stuff, but it was a beautiful story since chapter 1, and by golly, Don Krieg is part of that beauty. Kuro is a part of it, Choo Choo is a part of it, these nameless marines who cheer after Morgan's defeat are a part of it. Thank you for watching. Like and sub if you want to see more, and you know, I'm just saying that Luffy never calls Kid or any other supernova or like Law or whatever his rivals, but he called Don Krieg a rival, and a strong one at that. You also stop lying and pretending like Kid is the Vegeta or the Sasuke when it's clearly my man Don Krieg, strongest man in East Blue. And Garp was likely in the East Blue training Kobe and Helmeppo during this time, so he is therefore stronger than Garp and is therefore a top tier. And also he technically beat Luffy because he was still up and like rampaging at the end where Luffy was out of it because he was underwater. So clearly Don Krieg, top tier, strongest man in East Blue, stronger than Garp, cool man, like him a lot, good character,